Well, hello everybody. This is Bob Fox, your host for the podcast Heroes of Hampton Roads. And today we're going to be interviewing somebody who currently lives outside of Hampton Roads, but used to live in Hampton Roads. My good friend John Raymond and his wonderful wife Janet. They live in Northern Virginia, and they have done something amazing for the state of Virginia that I know you're going to enjoy hearing about. So welcome, John and Janet.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. All right. So my first question, John and Janet, is what exactly do you do normally with your lives? And then what did you recently do that was a very dramatic and an important thing for people to know about?
Would you like to start?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking to Janet.
Oh. Okay.
So John and I are both licensed professional counselors in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I was looking it up. I've been licensed for about 32 years, and John's been licensed about 16 years. So we've both been doing it a long time, which means we have a lot of experience with a lot of things people are working through. We work with individuals, families, adults, children now. So I'm really grateful to be able to do that. If you want to tell them a little bit about the bill. I looked it up. It was House Bill 386 that we got involved with.
Yeah, so for now, it's like we hesitate to say that we work with children because for the past 5 years we haven't, because of what they did with that House bill and what they call conversion therapy. So to explain what they did with this conversion therapy ban back in 2019, 2020, is they pretty much said that if a child comes into the office and states their gender, which might be different from their biological gender, we have to affirm, whatever they state. That there's no discussion. Even if the child wanted to talk about it, there's no discussion, or the parents want to talk about it, there's no discussion. You have to affirm. They call it affirming care. Mm-hmm. So at that time, we thought it was, we couldn't do that. So we stopped seeing children. And before that, we were working a lot with families and children. So when you heard Janet say we work with children, it's kind of hard for us to say that right now because we're trying to wrap our head around we can actually do that now. And we can do it because the Founding Freedoms Law Center helped us challenge that law, that regulation, and actually we got it to where we can actually talk with children now. So because it was a freedom of speech and religious liberty issue. So it wasn't necessarily just a Christian issue. It's freedom of speech. Counselors have the freedom of speech, so do clients. So that when the state comes in and says you can't talk about something, they're trampling all over those constitutional state and federal rights that the client and the counselor has. So we were able to get that reversed. Now the rest of the stuff with the conversion therapy, shocking kids, keeping them, whatever they consider conversion therapy that they might have done in the 60s or 70s. Of course, that's still in place. We don't want to duct tape kids down to a chair, electrocute them or shock them or anything, but never did. So let me recap for people who aren't familiar with what counselors did do and couldn't do. Let's see if I can recap what you just said. Prior to 2019 in the state of Virginia, if a family brought in a child and said, son is struggling with same-sex attraction and both he and us would like to talk about that, you could talk to them about it. Right? Yes.
And you could offer them whatever psychological resources you'd have to deal with that issue. But after 2019, the state made a law that forbade any counselor from addressing that, even if the parents wanted to address it. And the child. You were forbidden to discuss it. All you could do was affirm if the child felt like he was trans and a different gender than his biological. You couldn't discuss it. You could just say, well, you must be whatever you think you are. Is that correct?
Yes.
Even if the child wanted to talk about it, and even if the parents wanted to talk about it, you still could not say, well, there are some differences between what you feel and what your body actually is. So you challenged that law, and with the help of this other legal group, Christian legal group, I presume, you were able to get the law reversed. So now we're back to square one before 2019, where you can go back working to kids like you used to. Is that all correct?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So for 2019, this is 2025. So for 6 years, all counselors throughout the state of Virginia were under that law and could not, unless they wanted to lose their license, could not talk to children and parents, even though they wanted to, about those kinds of issues, about same-sex attraction or trans issues. Is that correct?
That's correct. I don't know if everybody was aware of it, but yes, nobody in the Commonwealth of Virginia, no counselor could discuss that other than affirm whatever the child states.
Right.
And there's a lot of other states that are doing that. But Florida, there was a case that was one in Florida. Tennessee just passed that law that they can't transition minors. There's was it Chives case? What is that?
Chiles.
Chiles case, which is going to the Supreme Court from Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of issue. So yeah, it's pretty prevalent out there, and things are starting to turn around. So bring a little sanity back to helping kids.
Exactly. Now, you mentioned that there were some abusive practices in the past where people were taped to their chairs or something and they were given electroshock or something. And of course, you're against all of that, which you mentioned. And that part of the law still stands. You can't do those kind of abusive, physical kinds of things to children when they come in. And we all agree on that. No child should be subjected to that. So you basically just brought a common sense, sanity approach to an issue that it should have been challenged. Are there other states that still currently have gag laws? I'll call it a gag law, where you, on the counselors on these issues.
Yes, I think Colorado, and I don't know if it was Oregon or Washington. California, I think they had a case that the person lost because California says that they can regulate professional speech and they consider counseling as professional speech. Speech is speech. How do you differentiate between professional and private speech? And speech for the client, for the child, that's a private speech issue. So it's a little confusing what they were trying to do over in California. So I think that law still stands. In Colorado, they did it, but that case is going to the Supreme Court. So the case right now to watch is the case before the Supreme Court this year to see how they rule on this issue of free speech. And, Bob, it's not just Christians that want the free speech. This is free speech for everybody. When a state can come in and just trample and like you say, put a gag order, on counselors, that's a problem. And it flies in the face of, the constitutional rights of free speech and religious liberty. Everybody should be up in arms about this.
Right. And it's the proverbial nose of the camel under the tent. If they can put a gag order on for this particular subject, let's say sexual issues, they could come in and say, well, you can't ever talk about religious issues in the future, or anything. Maybe medical issues. You can't talk about certain categories of speech which the government may one day decide are off limits, and everybody loses. And so you've done something really remarkable and important, not just for the state of Virginia, but probably for the nation, because this is a legal precedent, and other states are probably going to have to pay attention to this. Correct?
Yeah, you would think. It's on the books in Virginia now. It's a consent decree, so what they've agreed to is not prosecute anybody, if they talk to kids in a counseling session. It's an odd statement. So the law is still on the books, but they've just agreed not to prosecute anybody if they talk to children about this issue.
Okay.
And so, but it's still on the books, and they can use it, present it to the Supreme Court for that case. You can use it for a lot of different things. There's a lot of things going on. Family Foundations of Virginia has that legal arm, the Founding Freedoms Law Center. They're doing a lot of cases in Virginia, helping out a whole lot of people. I got canceled from being able to use the MLS because he's a pastor, and he was speaking about same-sex attraction as a pastor. And so they charged him with a hate speech crime or whatever. I don't know if it's a crime, but so they canceled his ability to use the MLS. Originally they lost it, but they pursued it, and now the MLS service has changed their definitions. I don't know exactly all the details about that, but Founding Freedoms Law Center is doing a lot in Virginia to help out these gag orders that are going around.
Founding Freedoms Law Center. That's good. That's a good name to remember.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the cutting edge of dealing with these issues in Virginia. I saw an article about that pastor, that he posted something on his private Facebook page about his views about homosexuality, and then the national or state realtor association tried to shut him down because of a comment he made on his private Facebook page. So these kind of things are pretty chilling. They're happening a lot more like in England. England is like way ahead of the United States. They're arresting people, the thought police. They're arresting people for thinking the wrong They arrest people for standing on the street near an abortion clinic because they were praying without saying anything. Can you believe? I don't know why those people, when they're asked, like, well, what are you thinking about when you're standing here? Why did they answer that question? Well, that's private. That's confidential to me. Why did they even answer that question? But yeah, they arrest people for all kinds of crazy things. So thank God that we're showing them that this can be challenged and challenged successfully. So as professional counselors, you probably have a good opinion on this. If I were a pastor in the state of Virginia, should I be concerned about talking to people about these things when they come into my office?
Well, pastors, what they've been, I think some of the relational posture that pastors have toward this issue with professional counselors is your professional counselors, your license with the state, it's not going to affect us. We can say what we want to because of religious liberty and we're pastors and it's a nonprofit and we go down that route. We are accountable to our board, not to the state board. Okay. However, in France, I believe that they are going after the pastors now. They're starting in France. Right. So it doesn't stop with counselors. They keep going and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And they'll keep doing it until somebody stands up, to put a stop to it. But
as far as you know, there's never been a law that says a pastor can't talk to a child with his parents about any sexual issues. Is that correct?
Yeah, not that do you know of any?
I don't know of any. I don't know that we would be the ones to know all the law, but I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
As long as we've been doing it, and we do keep up with what we know about pastors. Mm-hmm. But I would say, bringing up pastors, that it would be good for pastors to know that we can work with this now.
Yeah, which is great. They can refer to you now and without endangering your license. I was a pastor for a long time, and I've never heard any restrictions placed upon what pastors can talk about in a counseling session with a parent or even with a teenager. If a teenager walks in the door and says, hey, pastor, I'm struggling with same sex, or I think I'm trans, whatever. Sit down, son. Sit down on this, and we'll talk. Never have heard anybody warn me, like, don't do that. That's dangerous territory. Yeah. So I just want to assure pastors that they don't need to be afraid. It's still true, I think, in 2025, that no pastor in the United States has ever been successfully sued for anything that was done in a counseling session. There have been some attempts. Somebody was counseled and they went off and committed suicide, that sort of a thing. But it's never been successfully sued. So I just want to tell pastors that you're safe because of the character of your profession and there's a privacy shield around that the law can't. You cannot be forced to say what you talked about in there, that sort of a thing. And no pastor in the history of the United States has ever been successfully sued for anything they did in the counseling room. So you can breathe easy on that.
It's good to hear.
The realtor.
Yeah.
He was acting as a pastor, and he was making a statement.
Well, yeah, on a public forum, that's maybe a little different than the counseling. All right, but that's a good point. Even if I did it on my Facebook page, there's no law saying I can't say that homosexuality is a sin or something like that. Yet. Now in Canada, you can't preach or put a sign up like for your sermon title, homosexuality is a sin this Sunday. You can't do that in Canada. It's a misdemeanor. It's called hate speech. I think it's the same in Australia. But here in the United States, we have not made those kind of laws, and hopefully we never will. Well, so have you had any response from other counselors about this? Do they think that what you did is a good idea?
Very few, but we've had some.
Yeah.
One issue that we ran across, we didn't want to file this ourselves. I mean, we had to prayerfully consider what the ramifications of us filing this complaint with the board and everything that went behind it. Because when you make a stand like that, not only your target, but then it's kind of hard to do counseling with some people that might have a different opinion, and you're supposed to maintain some kind of neutral stance with them. So, put a target on. We get like a couple letters a week from this person. It's kind of funny. I like to meet them, but not very many counselors have really said much about it. Now, in Virginia, there are some organizations that I'm starting to get connected with that are really speaking out about this. It's the Association of Christian Health and Human Services. They're supportive. Just ran across an organization last night. What was that?
Association of Mental Health Professionals.
Yeah, they're out of Texas. So it's not just the freedom of speech and religious liberty. There's a lot of challenging to the field of counseling and therapy and some of the constructs that we work out of, like the DSM and diagnosis. So a lot's going on right now in the field of counseling.
Well, and you've done something that the church should be doing more of, and that's speaking prophetically to the culture. Basically, you were saying, from my viewpoint as a counselor and also as a Christian, these are legitimate topics of discussion for the sake of the client. You're not doing it for your sake, you're doing it for the client. And I think the Bible would back you up, that people need to talk about issues where their feelings disagree with what the Bible teaches, for instance. Now, obviously, you're not going to be talking religious language to all these people who come in, but that's your background, your construct is that there is a truth about gender that the Bible lays out, that you are your biological gender. And so I think that, what am I trying to say here? Every prophet in the Bible had some pushback. And I know that you both have experienced that, and I want to commend you for it. I think the church in America is not as prophetic as it should be. We should be speaking out on Sunday mornings about these things, but I don't think it's happening very much. I think that people in the pews need to be challenged to speak out, speak the truth in love to the culture more and more. So what you've done is a great example for the rest of us as Christians, that not only can it be done, but it can be done successfully. But that doesn't mean that you don't pay a price for it. A lot of the prophets in the Bible, including Jesus, were harassed. In the Old Testament, some of them were stoned and thrown in prison. I think of Jeremiah and stuff like that, because they just spoke the truth. So speaking the truth in love doesn't mean you're going to get away scot-free.
Yeah.
That's just, Jesus said if they hated me, they're going to hate you. So that's, he said, in this world you will have tribulation. That's just, in 1 Peter it says, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. Being a Christian who speaks the truth in love means that you're probably going to be criticized in some way. But I think God's proud of you. I know he's proud of you for speaking the truth in love. And I'm sure that there's a lot of families, a lot of moms and dads who haven't communicated with you yet, who are breathing easier now because they know that they can go to a counselor at some point and get their help for their child. And there's probably some young people too who are happy about that because they're just confused and they wanted to talk to somebody competent about it and they didn't know who to talk to. So now they know that they can go to folks like you. So how do people contact you? Let's say if they want to get counseling, or maybe you could refer them to somebody. Do you counsel, by the way, like over the internet, or do people have to physically come to you?
We see people both in person, and we have 2 locations. One is in Gainesville, Virginia, and the other is in Front Royal, Virginia. And so, but we can also see people through.
Okay, well that's great. So people around the country actually may see this video. Who knows? That'll be a miracle. But this is such a hot topic, it's very likely people beyond Virginia, beyond Hampton Roads will see it. So they could actually have them and their child sitting in front of a Zoom call with you guys. Well, that's really good to know.
So just to add to that, we're licensed in Virginia. I'm licensed in North Carolina also. So, if it's a counseling relationship, we have to be licensed in the state that they're in.
Okay.
So it's the state they're sitting in,
Gotcha.
not the state that we're licensed in. Right.
Good point. Well, sorry about that, but that's good to know. Yeah. So if they're in California, they can't really call you. So either Virginia or North Carolina. All right. Well, that's still a lot of people. Have you been able to? I know the law has been changed just recently, within the last couple of months. Is that true?
It was a little over a month ago that it became official.
Yeah.
So we've been studying and learning. In addition to, we both work full time, so we're slowly learning there's been some changes in the other changes in the law of working with under 18-year-olds. So we're learning that, but we're ready to go.
Well, that's great. So is it fair to say that you two specialize in working with minors?
I would say because we've been doing it so long that we've both been working with families and children as long as we've been doing it. So we have a lot of experience in working with families and children. So it's not certainly the only thing we do, though.
Right.
So yes.
But you do the whole spectrum of counseling?
Yes.
Counseling,
yes.
Personal trauma stuff, all of that. Okay.
Yes.
That's cool. Well, 32 years experience, Janet. That's amazing.
Yes.
And 16 for you, John. That's good too. But 32, that's a long time.
And I've actually been doing it longer than that. It just took me a couple of years to get licensed.
Yeah, right. And I know, of course, you're friends of mine, so I know you're strong Christians, very biblically based. So if somebody's watching this and you're looking for a counselor that you can, in Virginia or North Carolina, I would encourage you to contact John and Janet. We haven't had the time to really talk about all the things that they do in counseling, but I can tell you from talking to them that they're very good at a lot of things that some counselors aren't very good at. And we'll leave it at that. And I want to thank you for coming on to the show today. Is there anything that you'd like to say to any other counselors or families out there that may be watching?
Go ahead. You first.
John and I had two reactions to this idea. And so when we were approached, I was pretty afraid, so felt led to do it anyway, but I have had to deal with some fears about it. So just for the people who would be afraid of doing something like this, you're going to feel it and go to the Word, but I knew I was supposed to do it.
Good for you, Janet.
Yeah, the thing that I'd like to say to other counselors, and not just the counselors, but the universities and the seminaries, is to start to understand that politics really, it does matter. That it's people that are voted into office that make these rules that we have to adhere to. And if we're not paying attention to that, what's going to happen is what happened in 2019. You know, the gag orders, like you talk about, the stomping of our constitutional rights, total disregard for any of that. So churches, I know that the IRS said they're not going to go after pastors for speaking in the pulpit, but I think they really need to start stepping up and talking about the issues and about how these rules and regulations, affect our lives, on a daily basis, and our kids, how they affect our kids. So I wouldn't stand idly by. I'd get out there and get involved. If you're in a university and it's teaching fear, address it.
Amen. You mentioned the Johnson Amendment, that a lot of pastors for decades have thought that they couldn't talk about political things in the pulpit without endangering the nonprofit status of their church. The Johnson Amendment is unconstitutional. I know that because I talked to a pastor, he's well known, from Texas. He had 1,000 pastors send their political sermons to the IRS to challenge the law. They said, here's my sermon about politics. I preached it last Sunday. Do you have any comments? The IRS did not respond to not one of those political sermons. You know why? Because it would have meant going to court, and in court, it would have the amendment would have been declared unconstitutional on the same basis, basically, that you had your law change, is that it restricts freedom of speech. It's unconstitutional to restrict freedom of speech, even in a church setting. And so I know President Trump has said he's going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment, but really it's a toothless amendment. It's never been used to successfully prosecute any pastor in America, and it never will be, because it's unconstitutional. So there's another place where pastors can just breathe easy and just say what they want. In the beginning of our country, every pastor, or most pastors, would have a political sermon just before election time, where they would talk about politics in great depth and use names. This candidate believes this candidate believes that, and they would just lay it out there and say, this candidate has a biblical viewpoint, this candidate doesn't. There were no holds barred, and that's how our country started. And I think that's where our country needs to get back to. Yeah.
One last thing, just a heads up to counselors out there, that the next step, because you always got to be, thinking about their next step, where are they going to come from next, and what their plans are is they're going to try to get counselors caught up in a fraud kind of scheme. So counselors really need to be aware not to make any claims that you can change somebody's sexual attraction. Don't make any claims that you can't prove. Just be careful about that, about the wording, because I think that's the next move that they're going to be doing, is suing counselors for fraud. They already did it in Maryland, so.
Okay, good point. Good to know. Yeah, no counselor should be saying, I can 100% guarantee I'm going to cure you of schizophrenia or paranoia or same-sex attraction. I mean, who does that? It sounds like a marketing ploy, but it's not very realistic. Well, thank you again for coming on, John and Janet. I just want to bless you and your ministry, your profession, and all the counselors out there now who are going to be using this new law to set the captives free and bind up the brokenhearted in new ways, especially with minors, because of your courage and prophetic word to the culture and to the legislator. You did something that a lot of people would have been afraid to do, and obviously, but you did it, and I think God has really blessed the end product of that. So on behalf of the state of Virginia, thank you, and all the parents and kids out there. And I hope that we hear some really good reports in the near future about how this is helping kids all over the state. Thank you, and God bless you both.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
I'm Jeffrey Rosen, and I'm here at the National Constitution Center in front of the First Amendment tablet. Let's talk about why the founders believed that Congress can make no law abridging the freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, and petition. Well, they had 4 reasons, which have been developed by the Supreme Court over the course of American history. First, freedom of conscience is an unalienable right because people have the right and the duty to think for themselves. Second, free speech makes our representatives accountable to we the people. Third, free speech is necessary for the discovery of truth and the rejection of falsehood. And fourth, free speech allows the public discussion necessary for democratic self-government. In 1927, in the greatest free speech opinion of the 20th century, Justice Louis Brandeis distilled Jefferson's 4 reasons for protecting free speech into a few inspiring paragraphs. As Brandeis put it in Whitney, fear of serious injury cannot alone justify suppression of free speech in assembly. Men feared witches and burnt women. It is the function of speech to free men from the bondage of irrational fears. To justify suppression of free speech, there must be reasonable ground to fear that serious evil will result if free speech is practiced, and there must be reasonable ground to believe that the danger apprehended is imminent. Brandeis's inspiring test for protecting free speech, namely, government can only ban speech if it's intended to and likely to cause imminent and serious injury, was based on his Jeffersonian faith in the power of what he called free and fearless reasoning to expose falsehood through public discussion. As Brandeis put it, if there be time to expose through discussion the falsehoods and fallacies, to avert the evil by the processes of education, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence. Only an emergency can justify repression. That the greatest threat to freedom is an inert people, that public discussion is a political duty, and that this should be a fundamental principle of the American government. Well, that's the most inspiring paragraph on free speech ever written. But as that paragraph shows, all 4 of Jefferson and Brandeis's reasons for protecting free speech are based in an overwhelming faith in reason itself. The First Amendment is based on that faith, that people will take time to develop their faculties of reason through education and public discussion.